Well, we will have I'm going to do some introductions. We have a few questions, but we also left a lot of time for audience members to ask questions. There you are, of our panelists as well. So there's quite a some free time for Q&A. So please don't be shy to ask a friendly question. Right. You can pull that closer to you, please. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I think the shorts provided a lot of information, so there's probably some unpacking and some processing of the history, the implications of Asian American and Pacific Islander cultures and history across the nation and also where we are. And so it's our pleasure to be able to have these great local panelists who have volunteered to be with us here tonight to share some of their experiences. We have multi-generations as well, and we're just excited to be here. So I introduced myself briefly earlier, but I'm Sakura Takano. My day job is the CEO of Rotary Charities. I have been in Traverse City for about 11 years and was born and raised on the island of Oahu and kind of came here via a couple of cities, but Taiwanese, Japanese, first generation. Person. And I'm going to introduce our panelists. So we have Jamie John here. Jamie is a trans, queer, and two-spirit Anishinaabe and Korean American multidisciplinary artist. They are a maker of prints, films, watercolor paintings, poems, zines, and installations. They are inspired by historical narratives, relationships to land, water, plants, and animals, and intergenerational relationships. Welcome, Jamie.
Honey Buju, hello.
And next to Jamie, we have Nora Lou Robinson, and she is a Chinese American, where her mother was a Chinese refugee from Vietnam who resettled in Cadillac, Michigan in 1980, where Nora was born and raised. Since 2018, she has taught English to emergent multilingual students at the Interlochen Center for the Arts, where she is also a faculty advisor to the Asian American AAPI Affinity Group. Welcome, Nora. And last but definitely not least, we have Pam Yi, who is an Asian American born to a Nisei Japanese mother and first generation Chinese father. She retired as a court clerk for a Wayne County judge and moved up north and works and volunteers at Interlochen Center for the Arts. And as a side note, Pam was in Honolulu for the past couple of months and visited with my mother and sent me a really cute photo. So I thought it was just like really sweet for her to go and visit. Welcome, Pam. So we're going to kick things off kind of light and easy. And, I think the importance of storytelling was, very clear in the earlier videos. And so maybe we'll do a little bit of storytelling. If any of you wants to share kind of a story or a historical reflection about your name, and maybe just share that with the audience to start.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Jamie John. I'm trans. I chose my name. My first name I was named after my one of my grandmothers. This name that I chose now is much more gender neutral. I really liked comic books as a kid. One of my favorite superheroes was Spider-Man. He has a name with alliteration. His name is Peter Parker. And I wanted my name to be alliterative. So I chose Jamie John.
My legal name is Eleanor Lou Robinson, and the story there, Robinson is my father's last name from his father. And Lou is my mom's maiden name. So in a way, I have a hyphenated name without the hyphen, I guess. And my parents named my sister, my grandmother's maiden name, which was Harju, which is Finnish. My dad's side is Finnish. So my sister and I both have these like maiden name and then father's last name combo deals. And the story is that my first name came from a family friend who was Chinese American. I grew up in Cadillac. I think that was said. And my doctor's name was Nora Chang. And my parents really respected her and she helped our family out a lot. So when I was born, I guess they named me Nora after her. But the story is that maybe Chinese people don't like people to be named after them. So they just nicknamed me after her. So my actual name is Eleanor. And it's only later, much later, like after college, that I realized, of course, Nora Chang's name wasn't Nora. She was Chinese. She had some other name that I don't even know about. So that's sad and ironic.
My last name is Yi, and my father was a Yi from China. And Yi is like Smith Jones Brown. So there's not a lot of history. Apparently, in different regions of China, Yi takes on different connotations, but I'm not real sure exactly which region my father came from. On my mother's side, her last name was Morimoto, and I do know that means like a forest of trees. And when we moved from the Detroit area up to Traverse City, I live in the woods out on the Platte River.
You were meant to be here.
You think so?
So I know I'm the moderator, but I will also share because my name is Sakura in the native pronunciation, and I go by Sakura because it's just a little easier for most people. But my name means cherry blossom. And so I get to say I was also meant to be here. Well, thank you for sharing those stories. And we can go in any order as you feel ready to share a little bit. But our second question is share a little bit more about where you live and your personal experience of what it was like to grow up Asian American where you grew up.
Hey, I grew up in the Detroit area. We lived in Detroit as I was a very young child. Then we moved out to Oakland County to the Fenton Holly area where I went to school from second grade to eighth grade, and it was mostly Caucasian students. And and my brother, we were the only Asian children out there. So we were kind of like interesting, different. But that was okay. We were pretty well accepted. When I went into junior high school, my family moved into Detroit, and I was in the inner city area, and those were mostly Black students, and I was definitely different. But that was okay too. Both of those were kind of hard to fit in at first, but then I did end up with friends at both schools. Then when I started high school, I was invited to Cass Technical High School, and there were students of all nationalities, and everybody was college-oriented people, and so we were all kind of one community there. It wasn't divided. My father was unofficial mayor of Chinatown in Detroit for many, many years. He owned restaurants down there. I worked at the restaurant, and I think all my brothers and sisters also worked at the restaurant at some time. After I got married, my husband and I moved up here, and the community up here was very accepting. They only had one incident up here maybe 15 years ago. It was Easter Sunday. We had gone with a group of people kayaking on Platte River, and on the way home, we stopped to get a newspaper, and I went in to get a paper, and this little elderly Caucasian man was muttering as he came out of the store, and I was going in, and he was talking about the Japs and the war, and it was, muttering like it was my fault, and I'm thinking I wasn't even born during the war, so it wasn't my fault. So my husband went in, and the store owner told this gentleman, this is her husband. So my husband brought the guy out to the car, you know, he just walked him out and he apologized. But that was the only time I had any incident up here that seemed to be racially motivated. Other than that, like working and volunteering at Interlaken, there's kids from all around the world, and it's very accepting up there. And in general, the area up here is very accepting, and I'm glad we live here.
I guess I could speak. I grew up in Cadillac, lived there till I was 14. And there weren't there weren't a lot of Asians there either. But I think I felt, the videos mentioned assimilation, and I felt like I fit in. I mean, I felt like I fit in. I did everything that everybody else did. But a lot of times other kids brought up to me that I was different, or people would, ask where I was born. And if I said I was born at Mercy Hospital, that wasn't the question they were asking. They were trying to find their way to the question they were really asking. And that got tiresome, but I was sort of used to it. And in a way, it made me feel kind of special, I guess. But I feel as I grew older, there were just a couple instances of really overt problems. I think my parents saw more. I would overhear them talking about things my dad's coworkers would say or that neighbors would say. But I think one thing that was kind of hard growing up was not really overt instances of racism, but just like a lack of understanding that there are other ways to live, I think. So, well, I'll put it this way. Most of my cousins, everybody actually, is like full Asian. I'm first generation, but most of my cousins live in California, like San Francisco, or they live in Toronto, which are bigger Asian centers. I mean, my mom's family was resettled here, and then everyone left as soon as they had the money, and they researched and chose cities that would be more comfortable for them. And then my dad proposed to my mom, and she said yes, and then we lived here. This is why I'm here. And I think my cousins, they all had like these communities that I didn't have. So there are a lot of times where actually I think my mom got the brunt of, like, I just thought she was really strange and weird. I couldn't understand the things that she valued or the things she was trying to tell me to do. Or, there's all these rules in Chinese culture, like your feet can't get cold, you got to drink warm water, like these things that don't exist in American culture. And I just thought she was nuts. And then during a few touch points growing up, if I was with my cousins, then they'd be like, oh yeah, they all say that. Yeah, right. It's what you do. And that's just stuff I didn't know. And so growing up, unfortunately, there was a lot of sort of internalized racism, I guess, where I felt really grateful that my dad was white, because then at least I could be normal. And I felt bad that my cousins were full on Asian and they were the weird ones. That is a super unfortunate way that I viewed my family, but it was sort of I think the result of just not having the variety in the community I needed. And so there's been like quite a journey actually to just understand like which parts, I don't know, the definition of normal is so problematic for me, and that's just been sort of a lifelong journey.
Thank you for sharing, Nora.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. I definitely relate to the, I had a lot of trouble finding community. I didn't grow up with Asian parents. My dad is a first generation Korean American immigrant. For a lot of reasons, he is not very involved in my life. And that doesn't make me feel like sad, or I don't feel any type of way about that really. It's just something that happens. I have a wonderful dad now, but he is from a different he's from a different cultural background and a different family than my Korean family, who would do different things like make scallion pancakes, and who knew how to make kimchi, and who knew like their last name before they had to change it. I It's only now that I'm starting to navigate and reflect on being Asian American as an adult that I am realizing how maybe alienating that was. To have like the only really like I had like a 100th day birthday celebration, and my shoes were always off when I was in the house, but I didn't grow up with Korean culture, with my Korean family, and as an adult I've had to find ways to repair that disconnection almost. Finding ways through like learning about Vincent Chen, or learning other kimchi recipes, learning about the history of the peninsula, learning why it's split up, learning even meeting other Korean people who live in town here. It wasn't until very recently that I met like other Korean American people who live around here. And it's been so a lot of Asian American life for me was very lonely. And when I was younger, I had much more, my eyes were much more almond shaped than they are now. So I was more easily identifiable as a Korean American child. I was asked a lot if I was adopted, which was odd for me. And then as I got older and I started taking testosterone, people started to tell me that I looked like my dad, which was super weird. I don't know him. How do you know him? But they would look at me and think like my dad, like the person standing next to me who had been here all my life, who had taken care of me, who had raised me. So finding ways to reconnect and assert my identity and find my place in community as someone who didn't have connections to my home culture, through food, through history, through social justice, through organizing, through meeting other Asian people, has been really fulfilling.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, one of the threads that I'm hearing through these stories is, we hear this phrase, representation matters. And it's not just a saying, it matters because young kids need to see people who look like them, to have role models, to understand what it could be like, what their futures could be like. And when you don't have that variety and, people who look like you, doing great things, like I think the first and second videos showcased, it does have a direct impact on lives. So I think you guys really like brought those points to light, and thank you very much for sharing those. Speaking of representation, I'd love to hear some reflections on, kind of based on what we saw is like, what has changed and maybe not changed over the course of time. How have each of you felt that representation, whether it be through education, business, politics, activism, improved in American society? And, where are, those areas of improvement still to be met?
I think the Asian Americans, as a whole, are very reticent. They're quiet people. They don't want to make waves. But there have been a few issues in my lifetime that brought the activists together, and one of them was Vincent Chin. I lived in Detroit at that time. And another one was my maternal grandparents and my aunts and uncles and my mom were interned during the Second World War. They were in a camp at Post in Arizona. And my oldest uncle was fighting in the 442nd Division in Europe while the rest of the family was interned in the camp. But I do think that the Asian people have come together more for some social issues, and I think that's a good thing. We are kind of a quiet people, but I'm not really that quiet. By culture I am, but by nature I'm not.
I have lots to say. Hi, not too many people know about this, but before Vincent Chin, there was a man named Cho Soo Lee in San Francisco in the early 1970s. And Cho Soo Lee was one of the only Koreans living in San Francisco Chinatown, and he was convicted of a murder by the San Francisco Police Department and put away for over 10 years for a murder that he did not commit. He spent over 10 years in prison. Over 4 of those years were on death row. The state of California tried to convict him twice falsely of this crime. It was not until they could prove racial bias from the police department that they were able to successfully gain his freedom. There's a really terrible movie about this called True Believer that is completely white saviorist. So actually look up Free Cho Soo Lee, the documentary that's narrated by Sebastian Yoon, who was formerly incarcerated, again, for a crime that he did not commit as an Asian American man. This movement, I like to mention him because I find that he is forgotten. I find that this fight to free Cho Soo Lee for over 10 years, galvanized by another Korean American journalist, K.W. Lee. K.W. Lee saw a lot of the inconsistencies in his court case and reported this to the San Francisco paper, San Francisco Chronicle. And he was able to galvanize college students, Asian American organizers, and folks in his family to have a retrial for his freedom. But Cho Soo Lee was freed after over 10 years in prison, but he had a lot of demons that he was battling. Demons that came from being incarcerated. I find that this fight to free him connects us to struggles against mass incarceration for Black folks, for immigrants, for Native folks, again, for prison abolition. The representation in the movie True Believer, it's from the point of view of like the white lawyer who was trying to get him free, and the Asian community in this movie is almost used like a prop. Like there's a scene in this movie where Cho Soo Lee comes out of prison, and there's like this small pitiful gathering of Asian Americans outside of this prison, which is sad, so sad, heartbreaking, considering how many people showed up to see him free, to see him out of prison. Lines around the block, a small city of Asian Americans who wanted him free. But I say this because these stereotypes that we are quiet or docile or submissive come from a desire to make your enemy weak. Fascism makes your enemy both strong and weak to justify their dehumanization. this is connected to like the imperialism overseas connects to the hypersexualization of Asian women, the emasculization of Asian men, the model minority myth, yellow peril. These are all efforts to dehumanize us, to justify our subjugation. And while the stakes for my life are maybe not the same as my Korean grandma, who had to give up all of her traditional clothes to be here, and to come to America. Maybe it's not assimilate or die anymore, but it is assimilate or be ridiculed. It is assimilate or be alienated. It is assimilate or deal with these feelings of being excluded, to face those harsh realities. So as much as representation in media can do, it can only do so much for real systematic political change that galvanizes us in, outside of people who make movies, who make TV shows, like the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, is striking right now. They're striking for our narratives to be told by Asian American people instead of AI generators who are writing, because studio execs think that they can own our stories and they can subjugate us again in this way, but it's not right and it's not fair. So I think representation on TV and media and books is really wonderful, but learning about the real Asian American people who did create change, who did make waves, who did stand up, who said this isn't fair and I'm gonna fight this, is maybe just as, or if not more important. And not just historically, also in your community as well, like right now doing it. Yes. Sorry, you can. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Y'all take some notes. Thank you so much. So articulate. Nora, you want to share a little something?
Well, thanks for bringing up the Chosu Lee. Well, I just watched that documentary on PBS like a couple of weeks ago. It was really marvelous. I mean, a marvelous documentary, a tragic story. I think I don't think I can speak fully formed thoughts the way Jamie can, but I'll say that I watched Fresh Off the Boat with my husband while it was on. I don't know if it's still on air, but I love that show. I think I didn't notice, I guess I'll say, I didn't notice that I was missing representation until I started to see it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that is me or my family. And I just didn't realize how much I wasn't seeing that until it's improving because I'm getting that feeling more, which I think is a good feeling. But I still think we're a pretty long way from having good representation. My daughter was born during the Me Too movement and my son was born during Black Lives Matter. And there's nothing that just kind of brings it all to a head, than these last, I think, 5 years.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I'm sure there are some burning curiosities in the audience. And I would just like to open Q&A up to the floor. And if you don't mind standing up and asking your questions so everyone can hear, that would be really helpful. And I'm more than happy to repeat the question on the microphone too if that's needed. So, for the Zoom. Okay. So I will repeat the question. And here we go.
Yes. So good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question in the back. So the question is to help distinguish between what a microaggression is and like overt racism. And just some examples or some help with that.
Well, I will say, or was that question for Pam, actually? I'm sorry.
Nora can answer.
I'll just answer for you, Pam.
But the teacher
Um,
did.
I don't think, I also will say that I've only just recently started to think about microaggressions, and I have a friend, I do some writing and I have a writing friend who's really been helping me through this. But I would say that, well, I've been experiencing a lot of rage lately, and I've been really confused by it. And I think a lot of that is actually the result of like a lifetime of microaggressions that I didn't notice, that are all just kind of piling up on each other now, and that I'm just processing now that I'm realizing they're wrong. Or, you know, like there was a period of my life where I thought things were the way, that's just the way things are, I guess. And I was just trying to handle that and swallow that. And small things would happen that made me really uncomfortable. And some of them weren't that. I'll keep it short.
This is going to happen every year.
I think I should talk over it. So like overt aggression, I would say like in middle school, there's a day, like this one day when a boy in the hall just shouted a slur at me. You know, I didn't even know, I wasn't familiar with the term. I know what it is now, but I could tell that it wasn't meant to be kind. That's different from a lot of lunchtime jokes or times with my friends where people make kind of offhand comments about, oof, I mean, yeah, how do you describe microaggression? Maybe you can talk about this.
I am borrowing this from a lot of Black thinkers and a lot of Black intellectuals who have done a lot of articulating about race relations and how those things manifest in real life and in these interpersonal interactions. And I'm sorry that I'm not citing who I'm borrowing from right now, but I think she says that I've stopped distinguishing between aggression and microaggression because it's rooted in the same thing. It's rooted in the same kind of fear and the same kind of hate. At best, it's in fear. At worst, it's rooted in hate. And I feel the same way when I'm called a savage in the grocery store as I did when I was stopped in the Detroit Metro Airport and asked for my ID. In a room full of Asian people. I haven't told this story, but I was coming back. It's January of 2020, and I'm coming back from China. I was called back early from an artist residency over in Shenyang, China, because of this weird respiratory virus that's going around and sometimes killing people. And I am called back to customs. I'm asked if I have anything to claim. I tell them no, that I have to answer. I'm taken back to like a room where my temperature is taken. I'm asked like a questionnaire of who I was with, where I was, what did I do, what did I eat, if I was in like an open air market or things like this, that I dealt with when I came back. And I'm finally through all of that. I am cleared to go. I feel like I'm finally back home. I'm in the States now. I'm through the customs checkpoint. I have all my luggage. I didn't lose anything. I can breathe. And I go to the restroom that's the nearest restroom next to the customs checkpoint. I'm in there for a little bit long, just decompressing from a very long flight. And I'm on the way out to the entryway to the other gates and to the airport. I'm stopped by a Detroit police. He's dressed in a uniform, and he asks for my passport. I hand him my passport, and I don't have my state ID at the time. I only have my tribal ID that identifies me as part of a Native nation. So I hand him both of my IDs, and I basically have to do this questionnaire again of like who I was with, what I was doing, what I ate, to this person who does not have the authority to do that, because I was like in the bathroom for too long, I guess. But I feel the same way when someone calls me a savage in the meat aisle of the grocery store. It's awful, and it's dehumanizing, and it's not right, and I know it. And so that's why I've sort of stopped distinguishing between microaggressive actions and overt aggressive actions, if that makes sense.
Sam, do you have any comment on that? I might just share that Nora actually shared a story that I would perceive as a microaggression earlier. And I've certainly received this as well when someone says, well, where are you from? 10 minutes. We love the library. But Nora mentioned a story of when someone says, well, where are you from? And you say, oh, I was born at Mercy Hospital, or I'm from here, just like you. And then they might ask 2 or 3 more times, no, but like, where are you really from? And that to me is like a classic example of the question is not matching like the intent of what they want to know. And I would say, my kids are biracial, and what they might receive in a school setting is I send them to school with Asian lunches, which they love to eat. But the kids around them might say things like, oh, well, that smells weird, or that looks different. So it's that like kind of like little teasing that's not overt, but makes someone feel different and, that they don't belong, that I would also kind of maybe pinpoint as like I wouldn't, maybe an ignorant or an unaware question that could be part of that microaggression feeling.
Yeah, or maybe growing up, a lot of my friends would be like, "Oh, Nora, your mom is hilarious," but it's like she's not telling jokes.
that, yeah.
It's the way she talks coupled with the things she's talking about. Yeah.
I think my mom's funny. Why do you think my mom's funny?
Thank you. That's a great question. Any other questions? In the back, Dan. We've got 8 minutes now. But Dan's question is, this room is full of people who are motivated and kind of self-selecting to come to an event that is, sharing different cultures. And so, how do we go from here for the folks who aren't in this room, or maybe who, could benefit more from the awareness that we're sharing tonight?
So my first thought that came to my head when you asked that was, if you are with someone who does something, say something, right? So if you're with friends who are doing something, say, that's not right. Why are you saying that? Why are you asking that? Whatever it is. I mean, supporting everyone by not having them be the ones who are the only ones who are asking those questions, right? And to Right. So, yeah, so I mean, just, and when you're with a group of people, somebody says something that could be a microaggression, is a microaggression, whether it's in front of someone else or not, especially if it's not in front of someone else. Calling people out when there is no one else in the room. It was just the first thing that popped into my head.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa. You have something to say?
Amy.
Or are we answering that question or?
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Somehow I think that the younger generation is more accepting and encompassing. And I think it's a lot of times the older people, what they were taught, what their parents told them, their neighbors, and that's sticking with them. And those are the people I think that need to, I don't want to say be educated, but like be brought into the fold, so to speak.
I do think the point about allies is helpful because I think I just say it so much. It's hard for people to hear it. Yeah, so it can be helpful to have someone, maybe it's helpful, I don't know. Maybe it's helpful to have someone who looks like the people who are saying it, say something because they can hear it more easily from that kind of person than from me. Maybe.
I sort of like to send people away with these things from with like homework. Like things that you might want to do or like things you might want to check out. So one of my favorite Korean American directors is Bong Joon-ho. He did most recently did Parasite. He also did Snowpiercer. If you like Chris Evans, he's in that. Kojo, I think, is on Netflix. I really love that one. There's a lot of what I really enjoy about his movies is that he explores a lot of things like settler colonialism. He explores things like capitalism, how these affect not just Asian folks, but Black folks, Native folks, how colonialism has happened even within Asian countries. And explores, who this is another director who grew up in Korea. So he has an acute understanding of, why the peninsula is separated, where his family came from, why they do what they do, and has a distinct sense of home and ideas of capitalism and how settler colonialism is interweaved into and imperialism that impacts not just Asian Americans, but rather our global issues that we even on this peninsula are not insulated from. Even my relationship to colonialism as a Native person more resembles that of one of a Pacific Islander to colonialism, I would say. Being priced out of my homeland, being subjugated to language barriers for no way to learn Anishinaabemowin, or I have to drive hour plus to see my elders. I have to think about how I'm going to get gas to get there. Think about how I'm going to get access to my traditional foods. Things like this are still, it's like they still happen here. Thinking about ways that, Title 42 ends in a couple of days. So anti-Asian sentiment also connects to anti-immigrant sentiment, which connects to settler colonialism. which connects to our collective dehumanization. So even just explaining to the people around you how these issues are interconnected, how they are not separate, how they are all connected to this myth of white dominance and white supremacy. Naming white supremacy when you see it, when it happens, when it manifests in your own life, in your own biases, in your own thoughts, are just a couple. I gave you like a couple. I think that's enough. Yeah, that was like a
What was
lot.
the name of the last movie?
The name of the last movie? Oh, Parasite, Snowpiercer, Hoju, Barking Dogs Never Bite. He's got like a great filmography. It's all really good. Bong Joon-ho is his name.
Wonderful. Thank you. And that actually brings me perfectly square on our final point. To your question, Dan, bring a friend next Monday, the Denos Museum, because we will be doing a film screening of Bad Axe. And we will also be featuring other Asian American Pacific Islander owned restaurants. And that's going to be Tuesday. No, Monday. I'm right. Monday, the 15th at 6 p.m. at the Denos Museum. And I'll just read a little bit about this because this is very close to home in Michigan. This film, Bad Axe, was the winner of the 2022 Critics' Choice documentary for Best First Doc Feature and the Traverse City Film Festival Audience Award for Best Feature Film. And it captures a closely knit Asian American family living in rural Michigan during the pandemic as they fight to keep their local restaurant and American dream alive. With rising racial tensions, the family uses their voice and must unite as they reckon with backlash from a divided community, white supremacists, and intergenerational trauma from Cambodia's killing fields. So please join us next week. Bring a friend or two or three. Bring all your friends and the ones that need to be here. And once again, thank you so much to our panelists, Pam, Jamie, and Nora, for sharing your insights and your stories with us, and your kids. Thank you for sharing your children with us. And to the volunteers who helped serve our delicious food, to Traverse Area District Library, to our committee members who have thoughtfully put together these events on our free time, past our day jobs and all of that. And we really look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for joining us tonight.